Okay. Okay, so 6:02 right now, and I see more people are entering the webinar here, so I am going to go and get started just to be respectful of everyone's time. So good evening, everyone. Tonight is the virtual engagement session for the Downtown Manchester Improvements Project. My name is Emma Peterson. I am the comprehensive planner for the town of Manchester, and I'm also a part of the project team. I'm going to be facilitating tonight's session, and I'm also joined by town engineer Jeff Lamalva and assistant town engineer John DiBiase, who are going to be presenting information tonight and answering questions and facilitating this session with me. I just want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded, just for your awareness, because we'll be sharing this afterwards for anyone that wasn't able to attend tonight. So I do want to give everyone just an overview of how this webinar tonight is going to be set up. I'm going to go over just a couple of notes on how best to participate in this format. I'm then going to go into a presentation on the project overview, high level, what's entailed, and some of our project goals. Then Jeff Lamalva, our town engineer, is going to be able to share specific details about the draft design for this project. There we'll get into a lot more detail about what's entailed. And then we'll be able to answer questions and collect feedback at that point. Because we are in this webinar format and we are expecting over 40 people tonight, I'm letting everyone know that I encourage you to utilize the chat feature of the webinar. You can enter questions. You can also enter any comments or feedback that you have right now or anything that comes up during the course of this presentation tonight. All the comments will be recorded and record for the public feedback, and we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. So, and if anybody has any questions, I also have help from our economic development specialist, Cici and Lovu. She'll be able to help answer any technical questions about participating in the webinar as we're going along. So with that, I'd like to start off with a project overview. And we start off the question of what is the Downtown Improvements Project? Why are we here tonight? So the Downtown Manchester Improvements Project is an infrastructure and streetscape investment project that really aims to transform the section of Main Street between Center Street and Hartford Road into a complete streets project that incorporates certain enhancements that aim to improve traffic and safety improvements, add additional public features downtown, and also provide an upgraded streetscape. There are four main goals of this project that I'd like to address to sort of level set before we get into details of the project itself. The first one being there is a need to modernize some of the infrastructure that we have downtown. There are certain elements that are in need of improvements that I'll get into a little bit more detail later on that are at the end of their useful life, and there are upgrades needed for downtown. The second is improving traffic safety. Unfortunately, this section of Main Street in the downtown corridor has been identified as an area of significance in terms of the frequency and severity of crashes. And there are certain design elements that can be incorporated into the road design to address these concerns. The other goal of this project is to advance connectivity and accessibility, which means accommodating different types of road users for our downtown district. We have a lot of visitors, a lot of people that love our downtown district, and being able to provide infrastructure that would allow people to utilize public transportation, being able to bike downtown or walk downtown, in addition to having a comfortable driving experience, is something that we strive to accomplish. And lastly, enhancing economic vitality for our downtown district. I've identified a series of investments that the town is getting ready to make downtown, and this also provides an opportunity for us to make downtown even more of a destination to visit. So I'd also like to address some frequently asked questions as I go along. and this will just be kind of peppered in to my slides here, but a couple ones to start off with are, we get questions of, does the plan remove parking spaces? No, the plan does not remove parking spaces downtown. There's no net change in on-street parking spaces, and currently there is an increase in off-street parking spaces incorporated in the design, draft design. Another question that we get is, are the plans set in stone? No, this is an ongoing process. This virtual session tonight is just part of a series of engagement sessions that we've been hosting to collect feedback from residents, from businesses, from other downtown stakeholders. And all of this feedback tonight is going, and through these other sessions, are going into updating this draft design. And so to get a little bit more into those project goals that I referenced, the first one here being modernizing infrastructure, and I say streamlining maintenance. So there are certain elements that are in need of upgrading downtown. These include things like the light poles, street trees, the hardscape, and the traffic signals. Some of these elements have not been updated since they were installed over 30 years ago and are coming to the end of their useful life. One of which being the traffic signals. Because of their age, they are not coordinated in the same way anymore. Upgrading these, incorporating new coordinated signals would enhance traffic flow and serve to add to the maintenance of our downtown district. There's also our other goal of, I mentioned, improving traffic safety. The downtown Main Street corridor has been identified as an area of significance in terms of crashes. There are well-researched design elements that can be incorporated into the streetscape layout that would serve to improve these conditions. And I've listed some of these here. One of which is known as a road diet or a roadway configuration. And this generally translates to having a 4-lane roadway and converting that to a 3-lane roadway. And also through the incorporation of dedicated turn lanes. These are two very common elements that can, have great results. A couple of statistics that are shown here. Converting a 4-lane road to 3 lanes can reduce total crashes by 19 to almost 50%. Introducing left turn lanes alone can reduce total crashes by, it says 28 to 48%. This is from the Federal Highway Administration. Other elements that can be included are roundabouts, modern roundabouts versus rotaries. We get that question a lot. There are some key design differences there, but modern roundabouts are a way to also help reduce crashes. And then also another element is high visibility crosswalks, specifically for reducing pedestrian injury crashes. And all of these elements are incorporated into the draft design, which we will get into in a little bit. Another couple questions here we have, can large vehicles navigate a roundabout? And yes, large vehicles can navigate the proposed roundabout. They have been designed to accommodate emergency vehicles and large trucks. Our engineering team has done calculations and talked with stakeholders to ensure this. But also another question that we get is, how would a roundabout compare to others in the area? And the proposed is larger than others in the area as well. Another question that we get is, will the road diet cause traffic delays? And no, that is not the intention. There is the coupling of upgrading the traffic signals and improving the roadway design so that traffic would flow smoothly down Main Street, and there would be no anticipated changes in travel times down Main Street. So third and fourth of 4 goals here, just want to get into this in more detail. So we talked about advancing connectivity and accessibility. And another way that we view that is accommodating different types of road users. I talked about upgrades that are needed to the infrastructure downtown. And there is a certain policy that the board of directors adopted in town. It's called the Complete Streets Policy. And the basis of that is that when the town looks to make improvements to our roads, the Complete Streets Policy outlines the principle that we should also look at the design of those roads and allow for opportunities to incorporate infrastructure that would allow for other types of road users. And so that, very, very specifically can be connected to pedestrians, people that are walking, cyclists, people that are biking or using public transportation, and making sure that there are elements that accommodate those different things. Complete streets as a design can be translated in different manners, but there's different elements that can be included. So the image here highlights. The top image is a depiction of a standard neighborhood main street, which you can see looks pretty similar to our main street downtown. And the image below highlights some design changes that could be incorporated to fulfill the ethos of the Complete Streets policy. And so some of those design elements can include the narrowing or incorporating fewer travel lanes to slow traffic, making it safer for pedestrian crossings. That's something that gets at the road diet or roadway configuration element that I talked about. It could also incorporate wider pedestrian walkways, specifically bike infrastructure, accessible pedestrian signals, increased street and pedestrian lighting, all of these things just really getting at accommodating different types of users and making a safe and inviting environment. And so, again, a couple of FAQs here. There is specific bike infrastructure that's incorporated into the draft design. And so we do get the question, why is the cycle track included in the plan? And very specifically connected to the goals of this project, part of the goals is to accommodate different types of road users, providing safe, dedicated structures for cyclists and other type of, we also consider other type of like human-powered transportation, things that are slower moving than cars, but separated from pedestrian traffic, could be scooters or skateboards or things like that. Providing that dedicated infrastructure allows a safe way for other users to travel. And we also get the question, who would use the cycle track? We certainly see a connection with recreational cyclists. The proposed cycle track would connect with two of our popular trails in town, the East Coast Greenway and the Cheney Rail Trail. So we absolutely see a connection there about people traveling from those trails to the downtown. But there are other use cases that have been incorporated into this. We see Manchester youth being one that could utilize this, people that are too young to drive yet, or middle school students that are traveling to Bennett Academy. And we also see a connection to non-drivers for any particular reason, or those that have limited access to cars. There is also frequent bus transit on Main Street. This could be, having cycle infrastructure could be a way for people to get to bus stops as well. And the last item here, our last goal, we talk about enhancing economic vitality. All of these things that I've just mentioned are significant investments in our downtown district that address maintenance, but also address improvement. And part of those improvements could also incorporate more public features downtown. So as we look to, add these different design elements, what are some other things that could add placemaking value to downtown? These could be things like outdoor dining that could be incorporated onto wider sidewalks. This could be decorative lighting that creates a safe walking environment, but also adds an aesthetic value. This could be additional landscaping, public seating, things like that. So all of these elements can be incorporated into the project so that we are not only maintaining the asset that we have, but also providing improvements as well. And so just a couple last FAQs that I'd like to address that we've gotten through our other events is, will this proposed plan harm downtown events? And no, that is not the intention at all. We are working closely with the Manchester Road Race Committee, has been brought up. We're working closely with the Manchester Road Race Committee to ensure that any proposed design wouldn't interfere with the logistics of the race. And there's no reason to see why another event like Cruising on Main wouldn't continue to be able to take place on our Main Street. We definitely cherish our downtown events. And then secondly, another question is, will this project decrease downtown visits? And there's no expectation that this would reduce the number of vehicles that would be able to travel downtown, and overall would only enhance the number of people that would be able to travel downtown. And so I want to transition now to have a look at the actual draft design now that I've gone through some of these goals. But I would just like to touch on, another question that we get is, what is the timeline associated with this project? So right now in 2024, we're really focused on public engagement. A lot of the work that we've been doing this year is talking with stakeholders and really getting a sense of where people are at with this project and what suggestions people have. We're looking to take all that feedback later this year and incorporate that into an update of the design and begin a more formalized design process. The anticipation is that, pending certain elements that would need to be in place, finalizing a design, finishing public outreach, things like that. An expected start date wouldn't be until early 2026 at the earliest. So just to give a little background on that as well. And then before I hand things over to our town engineer, I just want to remind everyone, if you haven't visited this page already, this is a link to our project page. So after tonight, you can continue to subscribe for updates, read more about the project, and also this is another platform to provide feedback as well. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to hand things over to Jeff to walk us through the design.
Okay. Thank you, Emma. Thanks for all of you for attending this meeting. I am going to share my screen. And Emma, if you could just let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Perfect.
I can see that.
Okay. So I'm going to walk you through some of the core features of this plan. The first and most important statement I'd like to make is that the plan is still conceptual in nature. That means two things. First, it's a starting point for us to seek public feedback. In other words, we're more interested in hearing specifically which parts of the plans you may support or not support, as opposed to an overall yes or no on the entire plan. This will help us move forward with a more refined design. Second, a concept plan lacks some detail, particularly as it relates to what we call amenities. Things like benches, seating areas, landscaping, bike racks, some of the pictures that were shown on one of the slides that Emma just showed. We still would like to hear from you what type of amenities you'd like to see downtown, but you're not going to see any of those on this proposed plan. For example, everything you see in green here is not necessarily grass. It could end up being grass, landscaping, stamped concrete, or another surface material. And while I'm on the legend, anything you see in orange is a proposed sidewalk. And lastly, a gray pavement colored here with the bike symbols is a proposed cycle track, which we're going to get into in a little bit more. So we're going to start out at the northern end of the project. The Lincoln Center is right here, Center Congregational Church here, and Mary Cheney Library here. One of the most discussed parts of the plan are the two roundabouts at each end of the project. Here we see the one at Main and Center Street. There are a few reasons we are proposing roundabouts at these two locations, with the most important one being safety. It is estimated that there's over 10,000 roundabouts in the United States. Now, while the state of Connecticut currently only has 26 roundabouts, more are in the planning stages. The reason roundabouts are gaining popularity is that they're a proven method of reducing crashes, particularly injury and fatal crashes. Studies by the Federal Highway Administration show that roundabouts achieve a 48% reduction in total crashes and a nearly 80% drop in serious injury and deadly crashes. And how are they so effective? Well, they reduce the number of collision points, and I have a graphic here to show you that. In a typical multi-lane intersection, You can have up to 32 vehicle conflict points and 24 pedestrian conflict points. Whereas a roundabout, the way it's designed, that drops it down to 8 vehicle conflict points and 8 pedestrian conflict points. And you can see, more importantly, it's the geometry of the roundabout that practically eliminates the type of serious crashes like head-on and T-bone types. I'm going to go back to the screen here. Other benefits of roundabouts are that they move traffic more efficiently because traffic is always moving. Studies show that roundabouts reduce vehicle emissions and fuel consumption by 30% or more. And lastly, it provides a great opportunity for some gateway landscaping and signs to bookend the downtown area by slowing traffic before it enters downtown. There's been some misinformation floating around on social media that I would like to address, and Emma did bring it up, and that is the maneuverability through the roundabouts and the fear that tractor trailers or worse, emergency vehicles can't get through them. This is not true. These roundabouts are on state right-of-way and will need to be reviewed and approved by the state to make sure they conform to their standards. And those standards include that the design must accommodate emergency vehicles and large tractor trailers. Roundabouts use what are called truck aprons, which are designated areas along the inner circle, which is this area here. And they're designed for wheel tracking of larger vehicles. I actually have a video here of a recently constructed one in Connecticut that shows exactly how a tractor trailer maneuvers around a roundabout. You'll notice the front of the vehicle stays in the main line while the rear of the vehicle tracks over that truck apron. For those of you who have been through the 2 roundabouts in Glastonbury, we do want to point out that the ones that are proposed under this project are approximately 20% larger than those in Glastonbury and are more in line with the size that you just saw in that video. I do recommend that you visit our project story map, which we will provide a link to see much more information and details about roundabouts. All right, enough about roundabouts. Let's continue south. The next feature of the plan is the proposed road diet. That is going from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction with dedicated turn lanes. The lane widths and the shoulder or buffer widths will remain the same. Road diets are another proven way to calm traffic speeds and to reduce crashes. The proposed lane arrangement will eliminate the weaving of traffic around people turning left in front of them and will also minimize crashes caused by screening or the blocking of sight lines to the second lane of traffic while either backing out of an angled parking stall or as a pedestrian crossing the street. I noted that it's hard to comprehend that reducing a lane capacity by 25% won't have an adverse impact of traffic. But also included in this project is the replacement of all 7 of the traffic signals that are on the Main Street corridor. These signals will be replaced with a highly sophisticated, coordinated signal system that adapts to changing traffic patterns. This, coupled with the efficiency gains by reducing weaving traffic, will offset that reduction in lane capacity. So theoretically, it would take about the same time to get through the entire corridor, but in a slower, more continuous fashion. The other benefit of a road diet is that it frees up space for pedestrians and cyclists. So that's a good segue to move on to the next core feature, which is the cycle track. The cycle track is a 10-foot wide, 2-way bituminous path that is safely separated from the roadway that can be used by cyclists and other non-motorized vehicles. We are proposing the cycle track mostly on the west side of the road, all the way down until you get to School Street. where then it will cross the road at a signalized intersection and continue on the east side of the road until it gets down to the far southern end of the project, where it will meet up with the Charter Oak Greenway. While it's at the same level as the sidewalk, it will be separated from the sidewalk by a landscaped or hard surface buffer area. Now, with the current traffic speeds, limited shoulder areas, and abundant angled parking downtown, cycling can be pretty daunting as currently. So the cycle track will provide safe accommodations for these users and fill a gap in the existing trail network. As Emma mentioned, once completed, users of the Charter Oak Greenway will not only be able to safely access downtown, but also connect to the trails in Center Springs Park and the Cheney Rail Trail. So here's a rendering of what the cycle traffic could look like. Again, it's off the road, separated by a buffer area, also separated from the sidewalk as a buffer area here. Let's move on to parking. First, I'd like to point out on the map, you see a bunch of different colored squares, polygons here. Those represent the existing parking that is currently downtown for the public. Overall, there are over 1,000 public parking spaces available. Emma did touch upon it, but it's important to note that this proposed plan does not decrease the total amount of on-street parking. Let's start with the east side of Main Street. As you see here, all of the angled parking that exists now is shown in this proposed plan. However, we are showing an option to convert to parallel parking and gain additional space for businesses to use for outdoor dining, retail displays, or other use. So we show that as a kind of an inset block here. This is what it could look like in any particular block. If you did change from angled to parallel parking, you gain an additional 12 feet of space to use. And let me just flip to the slider here. On our downtown story map, we kind of have a feature here where you can see the difference between what it would look like if it was between angled parking and parallel. You can see you gain some additional space in front of the businesses, some more pedestrian walkways. And that's essentially one of the renderings that we had initially, kind of is what this is showing here. It's this additional space here that's shown in brown. That would be the gain. However, this is an optional part of the plan. So we'd really like to hear from some feedback from, we've gotten feedback from businesses, but we'd also want to hear feedback from you on which of the two you like. And again, it could be done on a block by block basis. It's not an all or nothing thing. But I did want to show you the pros and cons of doing it both ways. So moving to the west side of Main Street. Right now, there is a mix of angled parking and parallel parking on the west side. We're proposing to change the angled parking on this side to all parallel parking. Now, the net result is the same amount of parking. It is just now that it would be spread out more evenly along the corridor. For example, up near Center Memorial Park, you can somewhat see it through the plan here. There's angled parking here, and then you have some bump outs. It's kind of the way it is all the way down. We're proposing doing consistent parallel parking along that row. Lastly, I'd like to point out some additional off-street parking that is proposed, and that is further down at the southern end of the project. The town of Manchester owns a lot across from the Bennett School, south of the Bennett Apartments. We're showing here that there's an option to construct up to 68 additional public parking stalls for use by the public for downtown. While we're in this area, I do want to look at two other projects that are separate from this project, but very much a part of the overall vision for downtown. The new library, which were approved by voters in 2022, is here at the corner of Main Street and Maple Street. This project includes construction of a 3-story library with off-street parking in the rear. The project is currently in design and expected to be completed in January 2026. More information can be found at the Yorktown's Your Voice Matters webpage, which is right here. So if you go to the Your Voice Matters webpage, you can see here's the library project, here's the downtown project. Click on these and you'll find a lot more information on each of these projects. Across the street, you'll notice this hatched area here. That is another development opportunity at the former Tong Building and Forest Street parking lot. The town will solicit proposals from private developers to develop this property with a caveat of maintaining a minimum number of off-street public parking spaces. It is likely this solicitation will occur later this year after the building is demolished. And finally, at the southern end of the project is the second roundabout. This one is similar in size to the one proposed at Main and Center Street. That concludes the walkthrough of our plan. I'm going to hand it back to Emma to facilitate some questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Just getting my screens aligned here. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to switch over to some questions. I see that there's been some activity in the chat, which is great. When we start answering some of the questions that we've received, please feel free to continue entering your comments into the chat. We'll go along as we see the questions come up. I am just going to share my screen again briefly because I just want to get us a little bit to get started. If you haven't posed any feedback or questions yet, I see some technical questions about the design, and we'll definitely get to those. I'd also like to just ask our participants, to think about how can the project best achieve the goals that I started out this presentation with. In addition to the logistics of what a road streetscape enhancement might entail, what types of amenities would you like to see more of downtown? How can we really enhance the downtown that we already have? And then, like I said, what other questions come to mind? And so with that, I'm going to start getting our questions in line here. We do have a couple questions to start off about the roundabout, Jeff and John, if you'd like to help answer this one. One is really just about navigation, pedestrian navigation through the roundabout. How does a person safely cross the street using a roundabout? If you could go into a little detail about that. Oh, and Jeff, you're muted.
Okay. Yep.
Oh,
I'm going to share my screen to show you. So let me do that first. Okay. So the question is, how does a pedestrian move about a roundabout? And the answer is, you basically traverse around the outside of the roundabout using, so the orange here is the sidewalk. Essentially, one of the benefits of a roundabout is that you're really only crossing one lane at a time. Now, I know this particular roundabout at Main and Center does show 2 lanes for about half of the roundabout. It may or may not end up that way, but at the most it would be a 2-lane. But primarily, you would cross one lane at a time. Then you would get into essentially the median island, which is a protected island. And then you, again, cross one lane at a time, looking in the direction of the traffic. Each of these crossings will have the push button strobe lights like you see downtown at, I believe it's Myrtle Street. So again, the reason why roundabouts are actually safer and proven to be safer are because at these crossings, you're crossing where traffic is going slower than it would at an intersection. If you think about it, roundabouts are designed to, and it's not really clearly shown here, but as you approach a roundabout, the lanes are aligned such that it makes you slow down. And so as you're entering a roundabout, you're entering at about 15 miles per hour. And once you're in a roundabout, that's really about the max you can drive it without, without significantly driving off the road. But so roundabouts force you to reduce the speed. And then as far as the crossings, you're doing the crossings where at the point where the vehicles are slowing down to yield anyway. I hope that answers your question.
And I also just want to segue that, another question that we received is, the understanding how someone that may not have used a roundabout before, how they would learn to use a roundabout, how they would navigate the roundabout. And you started to touch on that with, the way that the roundabout is designed, the vehicles really slowing down before they enter. Can you just touch on, the actual movement of the car itself through the roundabout again? What what I'm getting at.
Sure. So let me share it again. So again, all traffic enters the roundabout. You're essentially yielding to the person in the roundabout. Once you are in the roundabout, you essentially have the right of way. So, vehicles coming into the roundabout will have to yield to you. As far as I think, John, do you remember it on our story map? I think there was like a informational thing about roundabouts, a video presentation.
I believe there is, along with a couple of brochures that Connecticut DOT has handed out that provide some information for users.
Yeah. So I do recommend, if you go to the project webpage, there's what we call the story map, and there's a lot of information. You can see this top tab. You can scroll through all the different aspects of it. And if you go under roundabouts, we do have links to, FHWA, do you know the rules of roundabouts? There were some other ones that kind of goes through exactly what you're talking about. How do you use a roundabout? How, what essentially you slow down, you look around, and you're be ready to yield. It really is that simple, and simple by design. In fact, even to the point where roundabouts, the center part of the roundabout, they actually tell you to kind of build that up so that you essentially block sightline across the intersection, because you really want the driver only focused on the person in the roundabout in the circle. So.
And that gets to what I was trying to start with this conversation. Vehicles are slowing as they enter. There is, vehicles entering the roundabout are yielding to those that are already in the center. There are clear sight lines to vehicles that need to be concerned about. There is, there is a bit of a design change from a signalized intersection, but not one that hasn't been integrated in other communities close to ours. Another question that we have here is, Someone has a question here about, we mentioned that there's a grant that was received, a portion of a grant that was received for this project. The question is, can the grant be used for something else, for another project? The grant is specifically intended to fund the streetscape project on Main Street. That was the way that the application was worded, the intention of the grant, and also was was in line with what the grant was available for. It was the Community Investment Fund with the state of Connecticut, and so that's something that is, definitely a benefit to residents. We are seeking grant funding for this project, but there is some parameters around what the funds could and could not be used for. So I can just make sure to answer that question. Another question that we have here is, how do bus stops interact with the flow of traffic with this proposed design?
Sure.
Jeff, can I have you? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So at the concept level, we are showing some areas, like for instance here, with some potential pull-offs for buses, but we really want to look at the corridor overall, and not just look at buses, but look at deliveries, buses, ride share, kind of consolidate some of these. We're trying to get away from the massive, 80-foot long, 12-foot wide concrete bus pull-offs that are there now that are used maybe once every hour or two, and consolidated with a little bit more efficient design. But to answer the question is that there will still be areas to pull off outside of the travel lane for buses, so they won't be stopping traffic in the middle of the lane.
And then similarly, there's another question here that kind of gets the same effect, how cars can navigate around people that might be pulling into a parallel space.
Yep. Yeah, so it's the same thing. The parallel space is here. Now these parallel spaces are actually a little bit larger than others. It's a 9-foot wide space to here, and then you have another 2-foot buffer area between that and the shoulder. So that's 11 feet. The average car width is about a little over 5 feet. So you do have, there's definitely enough room to safely exit, vehicles on either side to get it in and out. Where you are back, stopping and backing in, there are places where you might have to stop and wait, but there's also a lot. So I didn't get to this point so in the third travel lane, which are the left turning lanes, you have spaces like this, which we're just showing as, this hatch pattern. Those are not raised medians, those are flush medians, and they're just going to be essentially a different surface treatment. Think of maybe something like on Broad Street where we have the stamped asphalt for the crosswalks. It could be paint, but essentially they're drivable. So they're, if you need to, if somebody is backing in here, you could drive and bypass that vehicle by driving a little bit over onto that, as well as, the issue with emergency vehicles. If cars are stopped, they'd be able to access and drive over that as well. So between, the buffer areas in between that we have in here, we actually have a larger buffer of, I think it's 5 to 6 feet between the angled parking and the travel lane. Those should provide, enough buffer areas to be able to safely bypass and not just hold up traffic. Now, I did see a question about backing out of an angle spot, and it being actually, I think the comment made it said that it would be more dangerous. I actually think it would be safer because now you're backing out into one lane of traffic, not two, and that's one of the things I touched upon with the screening. Right now, if you have 2 lanes of traffic and you're backing out, you could be screened, meaning you don't see a car in the right lane could stop, but you can't really see behind them and see what the person in the far left lane is doing. That's where we get a lot of the crashes that we see related to the angled parking. So between backing out into one lane of traffic, and again, that additional buffer area here that we're showing, a lot of vehicles will be able to back out and actually turn without even entering out into this lane. Whereas now you have to back right out into that lane. So hopefully that answers those questions.
And speaking of buffer areas and cars navigating around other obstacles, there are a couple other points here that I want to address about roundabouts. They're sort of later on in the questions. Someone had a question about if cars are in the roundabout, and now emergency vehicle has to enter, like how is that work? And that definitely gets back to that space with the truck apron, and having flexible space for cars to possibly navigate. Could you just touch on that again? I want to make sure that we're getting to all the points about roundabouts too before I move on.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, here's a look at the roundabout. The green area is the actual raised portion of the roundabout. So that is not traversable. That's where, it would be, like I said, it would be built up, landscaped, things like that. This other hatched area here is that truck apron that was shown in that video. It's essentially this piece right here. And then you have your lane. So on ours, the width from here to here, I believe, is at least 26 feet wide. Plenty of room for a car. Now, the normal process is that once if you're in the roundabout and you see an emergency vehicle coming, you try to exit the roundabout. But in the off case that you can't and you have to stop, emergency vehicles can still get around you because of that extra truck apron. This is all. This is. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and that truck apron too, it is a flexible space that could be used for an emergency vehicle to navigate around the car, but it is the texture of it. It's slightly raised. It doesn't look like a travel lane. So it's not a case where somebody would use that as a regular travel lane. It's just flexible space that could be used for that specific instance. Right. And I just want to make the connection to those other flexible spaces that are incorporated in the design,
right,
so that people can navigate around.
And just one more point I want to make. Even at what we call these the splitter islands. These are raised islands, but if you look here, look at this car, and he's still got about 3 more feet to pull over. You can see that there's still even at the splitter islands, there's still plenty of room for an emergency vehicle to get by them, even if they stopped right at the splitter island as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question I just want to bring up, just to consolidate this while we're on roundabouts. Someone had a question about, we had talked about pedestrian crossings. Will it be up to the driver at a roundabout to stop and let the person cross? So I know we had talked about pedestrians crossing one lane of traffic at a time, having the RRFBs or the strobing lights that pedestrians can use to cross. Also, the cars entering the roundabout are going to be at significantly reduced speeds. I think you had mentioned 15 miles an hour. So all of those things combined, yes, the car will have to stop for a pedestrian, but all of the factors around that, the car must yield to pedestrians when they're crossing. There'll be visual cues, there'll be significantly reduced speeds. And so, yes, at a signalized intersection, you have the red light and we have the cross signal, but the conditions here are going to be favorable for someone to stop and look for a pedestrian. I just want to touch on that. What else do we have here? Let's go to. Well, a couple of these I just want to touch on. One question is, it says handicap ? I believe that's referring to, will there be handicap spaces on incorporated on Main Street? And absolutely yes. At this level of design, some of those details are not yet incorporated because we're focused on the higher level design elements, but handicap spaces are absolutely a part of this plan. And Jeff, I don't know if you have any other specific comments on that.
Yeah, we do show some handicapped parking spaces, but in some of our feedback, we're actually hearing, maybe there should be more handicapped parking spaces directly in front of the stores, as opposed to in the rear of the stores. So that's something we're also considering as well.
Then we have a couple questions about the bike path here that I compared together. We have a question here. Is it possible to move the bike path to run parallel to Main Street and through the parking lots behind Main Street? We have had some comments about incorporating bike paths outside of the Main Street design. And while there are other initiatives about developing and connecting our bike paths, there is a focus on incorporating a bike infrastructure into Main Street, and not just stopping there, but also including other developments that would connect our bike infrastructure for sure. So that's not something that we see as being mutually exclusive. We just also like to incorporate bike infrastructure onto Main Street that aligns with the project goals for sure.
I can tackle
Yeah.
this one too as well. I'm going to bring back my screen. That is a great point, because we actually did look at that, but unfortunately, we don't have enough continuous right of way to completely move the cycle track off of Main Street in the rear of the building. So the colored lots are what we own, but many of these are private lots. Even once you get up to I believe it's Bissell Street, there's no way of continuing further. That's not to say, we can add spurs like Emma has talked about. We've gotten some great feedback about, connections, up Park Street, connections to the Cheney Historic Area via Forest Street. And those are all, things that we definitely have on our radar. The question is whether it will be included in this plan or not. That's to be determined. But like Emma said, the goal is to at least get the path along the Main Street corridor at this time.
I appreciate the way you phrased that. Yeah, because it's absolutely been a part of the question. Just that with the project's goals, I mean, we're looking to have infrastructure on Main Street for that purpose of accommodating multiple users. But there's more connections to be made for sure. Another question here. One that I can address quickly here is, someone is asking about cost in local funding. How much is going to cost local taxpayers? We've received a partial grant funding in the amount of $7.5 million, and the project team anticipates pursuing other grants for the remainder of the funds, and so that's the funding strategy there. No plan to use to local funds for that. Another one we have here is.
Can I just touch upon that too?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So again, we're obviously trying to get as much state and federal funding as possible. And the reason is by doing this as a comprehensive plan like this. But if we weren't doing it this way, historically, we've needed to go to using our public works bond to be able to upgrade the roadways, the traffic signals, all of these things. And those are locally funded projects. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. We have. Are there any plans to install EV chargers, maybe not on Main Street, but in some of the lots on the side streets? This gets,
We actually,
just
yeah,
go
I
right
was going
ahead.
to say, we actually and I'm not sure if they're done yet, but we are installing currently EV chargers in the Purnell Place parking lot now. But yes, the question is, will we possibly install some more with this project? And I think yes, we are going to look into that as well.
We have, will there be restrictions for the bike paths now that electric bikes are popular? I know I'll just sort of start this, Jeff, and definitely add in, but I know the intention of the cycle track design for this project is to have a separated space for slower moving, human powered vehicles to travel that are completely separate from somebody that's walking, but also safely separated from someone that's driving their car. So having someone that's biking with a purely human powered bike could also interact with someone that's utilizing an electric bike as well, but there would be separate infrastructure for that. You want to build on that, Jeff?
I mean, the only thing I would add, I'm not sure what particular restrictions there are going to be, other than being a non-motorized vehicle. I'm not sure exactly if they consider that a motorized vehicle or not. But in general, we are going to have as many features as possible to show that, this isn't the Charter Oak Greenway where you have wide open spaces and you can just essentially bike as fast as you want. This is a downtown urban area. We'll have crosswalks identified, we'll have signs, but the reality is that this cycle track is going to be a little bit different than the Charter Oak Greenway. It's going to be that wide, but physically, let me just go back to the rendering. You can see here, you're going to have light poles, stop signs, a lot more people right next to you. So I think just that feeling of the perspective is going to make people kind of slow down on their bikes as opposed to being wide out in the forest, out on the greenway. And we're going to do as much on the design side to try to make it that way as well.
Sorry, I'm just looking through our questions here again. We have, okay, a couple questions here that kind of deal with like traffic calming and traffic enforcement. So there's a question, are there any plans for additional traffic calming on, say, Spruce Street in conjunction with these plans? Now I know the project parameters that we're talking about today are specifically on Main Street in between the intersection between Center Street and Hartford Road. There are, I don't know if Jeff, there's anything you can touch on. There are initiatives outside of this project that get to extra calming, traffic calming measures.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great. Exactly. This project, no, but you may have heard, we do have initiatives in town that are low cost. Like, for instance, you may see more of the speed feedback signs recently out on some of the roadways, but specifically to Spruce Street, there is an initiative that was brought up, I believe, at the last board meeting with the Nathan Hale site. And part of that will be some improvements to the roadway in front of that to create essentially what we're calling a raised intersection speed table, and some other elements to kind of to do the traffic calming like you talked about, but also to be an amenity for a lot of the events that are held over at that site as well, to make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's definitely part of the conversation to connect this project with other projects going on in town. But it's also just a good reminder to know that there's lots of different things happening. And someone else has a question, similar vein, but back to the actual Main Street corridor. Will there be any additional traffic enforcement planned for the flashing crosswalks, given the less than ideal compliance rate with the current ones on Main Street? And I think to start the answer to this question, it's very helpful to sort of bring this in context of some of the design elements that are proposed in this plan are designed in a way to slow traffic so that it will be easier for pedestrians to navigate Main Street. So I do want to start off with that. I know I see John has his camera on now. He's getting ready to add to this. So please, engineering, continue on with that. Do you have anything to add to that for that question?
So one of the reasons I think we have some compliance issues with the unsignalized crossings on Main Street revolves around the fact that there's 4 lanes that you need to cross. And because there's no median, no raised median in the middle of the roadway, the flashing beacons are at the roadside. And with all the background noise of commercial buildings, signage, street lighting, people walking about, the traffic signals on the corridor, it just doesn't quite grab the driver's attention when you're in those center lanes. Under the proposed concept, we're reducing the number of lanes out there. The through traffic is going to be in a travel lane adjacent to where we have the beacons at the roadside. And at the roundabouts, most of the approach legs are going to have potentially the beacons on both sides of that approach leg, right in the driver's face, to help grab their attention, to get them to recognize that there's a pedestrian here, indicating they're looking to cross, and as a yield state, you need to yield and stop for that pedestrian to allow them to do so. So the project, by shortening these crossing distances, I think will go a ways towards actually addressing that compliance issue. Also, engineering is one of the E's that we talk about. Enforcement is another one. And, we do provide speed data to Manchester Police and try to provide them information for them to plan and work on their enforcement campaigns. So part of that is going to be ultimately part of the solution. That's something that we'll be talking with our friends at law enforcement about as well. One comment I'd like to address too, we're talking about Spruce Street and the possibility of traffic seeking alternate routes. We've modeled the corridor. The plan is to replace all the traffic signals, as Jeff had indicated. The traffic signals right now, they're older hardware. Some of the detection doesn't work, or is periodically not functioning, unfortunately. The goal is all brand new equipment, provide new fiber networking to connect them, get them to talk to each other, which will improve the coordination, getting the series of green lights and not hitting, red light after red light, which I find on my commute in the mornings. But also on top of that, we're considering running adaptive signal technology, which allows not only the signals to coordinate with each other, but to on demand, reacting to the traffic that's coming into Main Street, adjust the timings on the fly. And that's similar to what we're running out in the Buckland area. When we've looked at travel times both on Main Street and the quote unquote alternate route, which people typically point to Spruce Street as an example, that's a significant amount of delay to get somebody to seek Spruce Street to double back to Main Street. And if there's going to be a little bit of delay on Main Street, it's not going to be nearly significant to get somebody to say, oh, this is a much better route. We don't really see that happening. However, monitoring traffic and, again, working with law enforcement, if there's a need to seek their assistance in addressing issues on Spruce Street, that's something that, we'll speak with them about.
Emma, there is a question I'd like to tackle.
Yeah.
The question about if people are uncomfortable with parallel parking, could that deter people from coming to Main Street? It's been amazing with the feedback in all the open houses that we've seen. It's some people are parallel parkers, some people are angle parkers. It's like Red Sox versus Yankees. You're one or the other. And I think the goal of the plan, and as you can see with the concept, is that we want to provide both, because if different people are comfortable with different methods of parking. So I think we've accomplished that by, keeping a lot of the angled parking on one side and keeping the parallel parking on the other.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because that was actually the next question that I was going to go to, and my point was going to be just like you touched on. I think the benefit of the way that the parking is configured in this current draft design is it does maintain that distribution in a way. You know, angled parking is primarily on the east side where people are used to having angled parking. Parallel parking is largely on the west side. And then I'd also like to add, you know, we have nearly 1,000 public parking spaces distributed through downtown, including our public parking lot. So there's a lot of opportunity for someone to park and visit downtown as well. And then there was another parking question that I wanted to touch on after this. Someone asks, what is the plan for the parking lot between the Tong Building and Army Navy Club? Considered a multi-level parking lot. And so there is, you know, Jeff had touched on this when we were going over the draft design. There is a plan in place to redevelop the 942 Main, also known as the Tong Building, and the parking lots included in that. There is no specific agreement with a developer at this time, but the town is looking to maintain parking in that lot. Although there may be a reconfiguration of where the parking is available on the lot itself, there would be parking maintained. As far as a multi-level parking lot, there's no specific incorporation of a multi-level parking lot, but more details would come as that progresses. Oh, and I actually see I'm going to have Gary Anderson join us. He is our Director of Economic Development and Planning. Hi, Gary.
Hi, guys.
Add to that,
Thank-
add to that answer.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you did a great job answering. And, you know, I would just add that redevelopment of that site has been, you know, on the town's radar for some time. This is not a new idea. And I know, you know, one thing we want to make clear here is that's not part of this project, but we also understand that they're certainly related, you know, just like the library project. There's a lot happening downtown, which is a good thing. But this has always been on the radar to create a mix of both new building on that site, but also some public parking, maintaining public parking. And we're looking for the private development community to be able to do that. Obviously, there's benefits to having new build. We haven't seen new construction downtown in, you know, decades. So this would help achieve that. It would provide a mix of uses with some more modern residential uses. Probably that's what we're thinking about, with some retail on the first floor. So typical downtown development that would add to all the options downtown that we have right now. But as Emma said, there's also going to be a requirement that any developer maintains some public parking on the site. The plans that we have that we show now show a minimum of 60 public parking spaces, and that would be beyond the spaces that are available for you know, if people live in the development. Certainly there's additional private spaces required, but that would be beyond that. So that's what we can tell you right now. There's still some steps to go before we actually have a developer in place to do that development, but we're excited about it, and we do know that there's always a balance between, you know, off-street parking and building, especially downtown. And we understand that, you know, we're downtown all the time, so we certainly understand that. And we're looking to, you know, to incentivize a development or to attract a development here that's going to provide some of both. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, I'm going to ask you to stay on with me for a minute because it'd be helpful to add some context for this next question. So someone writes, just curious to address a little bit about the Save Downtown group. Says, is the enemy of this development the Save Downtown group? Is there an opposing team? And I could just start by saying that, you know, there is a group, Save Downtown Manchester. There has been some, you know, some consolidation of some differing viewpoints about the project. And they do have some materials together that you know, sort of solidify these points. And our project team has been able to meet with residents and you know, those that are organizing this group, and have been able to bring them in as part of this conversation. So I don't know if Gary could help kind of add some context to that, but there is a group. They're known as Save Downtown Manchester, and our project team has worked with them to sort of address these conversations about hesitations they might have about the plan.
Yeah. And I mean, first of all, I'd say we don't have any enemies, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
consider anybody our enemy. The idea here is to try to make downtown a great place for everyone, right? And that's, I'm sure Emma talked about, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting, but talked about the goals of the project. And these are things we've heard from the community over years and years and years. Make downtown even better than it is now, provide more businesses and more opportunities, and make downtown an even greater place to be, a more vibrant place, right? So this is one way that we're trying to achieve that. We understand that not everybody's going to agree with every single thing that's in the plan. We get that, and that's why we're here tonight, hearing from you folks, and also all the engagement work that we've done previously. So the idea isn't to get to like a thumbs up or thumbs down, right? I think everybody's a thumbs up for downtown. Everybody loves downtown. It's one of the best things about Manchester. I think everybody would agree that we want it to thrive and be as good as it can be. So again, these are ideas of ways that we feel like we can achieve that based on what the public opinion and public engagement that we've done previously. There's still some disagreement, and in the end, no matter what you do, if you do anything significant, not everybody's going to be 100% happy. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're listening to the community, hearing what you have to say, and then we've already done some tweaking of the plans. Perhaps Jeff's already gone over that. We've already made some changes based on what people said when the first iteration of the plan came out, so we can continue to do that, and we'll continue to meet with people and hear what they have to say. And hopefully in the end, whatever comes out of this is going to be a benefit for the community. We certainly hope it will be. But like I said, the goal isn't necessarily to make everybody happy, but it's to get the correct information out there, hear from people, and then move forward with a project that's really going to benefit the community.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. Very well said. And so, to continue to, we're still available to answer questions if there's anything that hasn't been addressed yet. I do have one last question on my list here. This just gets at, there's a couple different questions incorporated in this, so just let me take a moment to read it. I think essentially it's getting at the ownership of the downtown portion of Main Street. It's asking, can you outline the relationship between town and state issues for Main Street? Example, I've read that this is a state road, therefore certain repairs, improvements, et cetera, are state responsibilities. Jeff, can you just touch on,
sure.
the ownership?
Yep. So the town took over the ownership of this section of what is Route 83, Main Street, between Center Street and Hartford Road during the last major renovation of Main Street, which was, I think, in the late 80s, early 1990s. So the town does own and is responsible for all the maintenance and repairs for the section between Main Street and Hartford Road. The state owns Center Street and Charter Oak Street, which is why the roundabouts do extend into the state right away, but the majority of the project is within the town-owned right away.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see someone's typing, so I want to make sure that if other people have questions that we're answering that. I really hope that we have been able to answer a lot of questions. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. And while I'm waiting for just see if there's last questions in the chat here, I do want to remind everyone that all the information that we've covered tonight is available on our project page. I'm going to put a link in the chat. There is a platform that the town uses called Your Voice Matters, manchesterct.com. You can find information about the Downtown Manchester Improvements Project and other town projects on that page. It provides a lot of information about town projects. It also provides an opportunity for people to ask questions and engage digitally with public feedback initiatives. So it's a really great resource to have on hand. I do see, John, did you have a question? see your hand is up.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I've been watching the chat. I see a number of comments relating to amenities along Main Street. When we get into the preliminary design part of the project, the placement of amenities, what type and where along and how many is something that we're going to come back to the public and have a conversation about. And that's something we really want to hear your input. Where do you want to see those amenities? And we're listening. We're seeing the comments. We're taking notes. We're not quite ready to get into that level of detail, but we're working towards that. And so I appreciate you reach out and pointing some of that out now as well. So we hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All the chat, the whole chat tonight will be recorded. All comments are going to be recorded as part of public feedback. We really wanted to take the time to make sure that we're answering people's questions, but everything, everything's being recorded tonight. And also, I encourage everyone to visit that project page as well. There's other opportunities to contribute to forums and provide feedback, but also to subscribe for updates to learn more about the project as it progresses. And so with that, I do see, I want to make sure that we're catching everyone. I do see someone still typing here, but I do appreciate everyone's time tonight. It's like we have the question, will the timing of the traffic signals be revised to adjust the green wave so you don't get stuck at every red light if you hit one? How will the improved traffic signals improve coordination?
John, you want to tackle that one? Mr. Traffic Engineer.
Sure. Yes, as the short answer. The goal is, again, as mentioned earlier, to connect and coordinate the traffic signals, get them to talk to each other, improve the detection all the way around. If you've been driving through Main Street, you've probably noticed certain locations where the detections failed. It's taken us a bit of time to get our contractor out, get things repaired, get it running again. All new equipment will help to kind of alleviate that. Some of the red lights definitely don't need to come up when they've been coming up, and it's primarily a detection issue. Getting the corridor retimed based on the new configuration, taking advantage of having dedicated left turn lanes, safe place to stop, and the appropriate phasing that goes along with that will be something that we will design into the corridor and get the green wave, as you put it, to routinely be there in the corridor. If you stop at one red light, ideally you won't hit another one, but like you randomly may do today, that's something that we're going to look at and make sure we can really minimize. And that's part of keeping the travel times similar to how they are today. So that's a great question.
John, can you explain the thermal detection feature? Someone had a question about that.
It won't be thermal. I'm not a fan of that. It'll likely just be normal video detection. We have some microwave detection out there right now. There might be a little bit of loop detection out there, but there's a balance of maintenance, cost, and reliability that we're looking at, and I've not been satisfied with the thermal cameras that we have currently at other locations.
Okay, thanks for that. And just to confirm, so someone had a question about whether the signals would include thermal detection, and they will not. Okay, thank you. Great. So yeah, thank you for everyone for attending. Just really wanted to make sure that we're really addressing everyone's questions tonight. Someone asks, will restaurants still be able to have outdoor seating? Well, there is, and I don't know if Gary, you can help me go through the transition of this, but one of the aspects of incorporating different elements into this design is to have incorporate wider sidewalks so that restaurants could have the ability to have outdoor signage. One thing that we've noted throughout this presentation is that some of these features could be incorporated on a block by block basis. And so a final design may, incorporate wider sidewalks in some places to accommodate that. It could be customized throughout the corridor. So that is definitely an intention of the plan
Yeah, I would
for
just point
restaurant
out that
standability.
that's true, Emma. Thank you. I would just point out that again, there's balance there. So depending on what how much space you use for parking, especially, that provides more space for outdoor dining. If you have parallel parking, that requires less of the right of way. So originally the plan showed a little bit more parallel parking with a little bit more sidewalk space, wider sidewalk space with outdoor dining. We heard pretty clearly from especially the business community that they were not comfortable with that. So right now we're showing more diagonal spaces on that side of the street. That said, there is a little bit more sidewalk space, space for outdoor dining now than is shown than it exists now. So no matter what, we'd be adding some. We'd have the option of adding more again if that's what the community wants. But as Jess said before, we're hearing a lot of different things. So be interested to hear, I think, what people think about that, what people think of that trade-off.
And one other point I want to make, regardless of which way that we go with the parking, I think we do want to incorporate, at least some just general public seating / tables, so that if people want to grab takeout from a couple of the restaurants or shops, they'll at least have a place to eat them. And I don't think any of that really exists right now. So I think one
That's
of the
great. Yeah.
one of the renderings I think we showed at the Oak Street corner there was an example of something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That gets into that amenities, the public features aspect that we talked about. I just want to address, there's a question in the chat. Someone had asked if a future meeting is scheduled. So there have been a series of engagement events that we've hosted over the past few months. In-person open house events. We have this virtual session here tonight. We are getting to the point of tapering off on some engagement events for a while so that we can begin to digest the feedback that's been received. There will be opportunities again in the future to provide feedback as we update the design. But for now, we are going to be entering in the summer into the update of the design process. So I would absolutely recommend that everyone visit the project page and subscribe for updates so that as soon as something becomes available, you can get a direct connection to your inbox.
And just the other thing is, we're not stopping that the web page. You'll still be able to make comments, correct, Emma?
Absolutely.
So that if you do have questions after this meeting or even in the next weeks or months, we'll still be available to answer those as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. Very much appreciate your time. Please visit the project page, continue to ask questions, continue to engage with us, and we'll be definitely keeping in touch and providing updates for next steps from here. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.